Hello, Caleb.
Hey,
Welcome to Calls Fan Podcast. The
I'll
last
quit
time we did a
quiet.
dual one was we recorded a month ago, and it was for the October announcement.
Yes, sir.
And here we are. So we kind of talked about doing something that was along the lines of things that we're studying. And then
Yeah.
we realized that that might take a little too much of Hosea and Genesis time, as in we would be there for the next forever. So we then had the idea to do something like a word or a theme study, maybe one that we thought about doing for the group, for our class sessions, but maybe it would be better to do it here, and then they can be companions to each other. So today we're going to be doing, I guess we really haven't decided if it's just going to be strictly a word study or if it's going to be a theme study with this as the focus. But we're going to begin with the Tehom of Genesis 1, which is also translated as the deep and is a parallel for some other Hebrew words for the sea and waters. But then we're actually going to also look at some of the Greek for
The
the Septuagint.
Septuagint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because while the Septuagint is not necessarily the original, like it is not
Not even
the,
close.
not even close, and is not really the, well, it's not because it's not the original, it gives us an idea of the things the Jews during the Second Temple and Jesus' time thought about. But there might be still some things here and there that are like iffy. But if we know how the word works, when we eventually get to New Testament, we can talk about those words. Where I think they don't appear a whole lot in the New Testament, if I remember correctly.
No. No,
But
there's a few. Obviously I was studying for this. There are a few instances, um and all of them are very interesting. I did write down one of them. I didn't know how in depth we were going in terms. I know we said we wanted to keep it as much contained to the chapter as we could.
yeah,
Um so I only wrote down one that I think kind of gives a little bit of context, and it's in Luke 8.
oh
But other
yeah,
than
yeah.
that,
Is it the
demoniac.
demoniac?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So
Legion.
yeah, so what will be cool is I think this will be a multi-part series that we'll do. And there'll be some days we might be a little more centered on one text, but we can address other ones briefly and then we'll get there. And there'll be other ones where we group together because they all look at things the same way. Like we'll probably look at a few of the Psalms together with like the Exodus narrative because the Psalms are looking back on Exodus in a certain way. So to home. So we are starting in about roughly 4 weeks, maybe later, a series on chaos monsters. But this is a companion to that. And so the Tehom, I'm not sure why I started there, the Tehom is found originally in Genesis 1. And so it reads in verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And in verse 2, now the earth was formless and empty. The darkness was over the face of Ha-Tehom, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the Mayim. Already, there's a lot of really interesting things. I think we honestly just kind of blow by there. I don't know about you.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we talked about this for back and forth probably like for years, and there's always something new that I come in and annoy your ear with, like, hey, we didn't do this right, and it's really interesting. So I guess what is in your study,
Mm-hmm.
or even like before your study, I guess what was your understanding or like your thinking or is the most common thinking of like the first two verses of the Bible?
Yeah, well, a lot of people think it just refers to kind of the earth not being finished,
Mm,
right? And there's a large part of that in the text, and that is certainly well reflected in the Septuagint. Um, However, I think it does go deeper than that, right?
mm,
And kind of in, I don't want to get too ahead of us, but just in terms of the chaos
mm-hmm.
and the order that God brings
Yes.
is very apparent in this verse, and that's not something that we talk about very
No, it's
often.
not. No,
And
honestly, I think kind of playing off what you're saying, I hear a lot of people either saying that verse one is the initial creation, which has problems, um, theologically and literary wise. Um, and then another option I've heard is the gap theory, which also has problems and is very what's what I'm looking for? It's very speculative. It's assuming a lot that is happening in the literature that is just not there. And so, I mean, there's other options as well. And I've come to favor verse one being, let's start there, as a title to everything. Because you get this merism of the heavens and the earth, which are not yet created until days two and three. Not only that, but if we say that day one, the first creation act is the first verse, we're saying that God created chaos. And I have theological problems with that. I don't know about you, but I have some issue
Sure.
with the idea that God is the origin of disorder. Whereas the ancients seem to have thought it as disorder was not an equal opponent to God, which is reflected upon in this text and then in the other ancient Near Eastern texts where they have to go to war with disorder. But he just is there. And verse 2 honestly really outlines that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go to verse 2, we have now the earth was formless and empty, or tovu vavohu, and darkness was over the Tehom. And then we have, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. So a lot there. What we have here is a very different picture of the beginning, or a beginning,
Yeah.
than we think of things. I think our modern day framework is very much more origins based in terms of coming into existence regarding substance, when matter begins, when things have gone from nothing as a no thing to matter and things. Whereas here we have in verse 2, before the first day, we have things. We have water.
Right.
We have darkness, which is interesting. It's a very different framework of looking at life. They're looking at life as creation is not just a beginning of like when metal comes into creation or like when you form glass.
Mm-hmm.
It's the function and ordering of the world around it. It is far more focused on not just how, but much more on the why. That things have purpose, that things are orderly, which I think even just for like Christian worship or our day-to-day lives calls for us to live within God's order, live within an orderly worship and orderly way. Not to say that if you're a bit of a mess, that means you're in sin. But because I'm a bit of a mess. But in the idea that,
We're all a little bit of a mess.
yeah, but in the idea that we don't want things to be left so spontaneously that there is no structure, because God provides structure. And I have appreciated one scholar. I forgot his name right now. I was reading one of his books for a study on the image of God, and he talks about he calls Genesis 1. He treats it like a liturgy. He says it's not necessarily a liturgy, but it's structured in a way that liturgies could follow. That we recognize who God is in light of everything around us, and then what our purpose is in regarding worshiping Him for who He is and what He has done and the kind of God that He is. But yeah, we have waters. We have this Tehom. So to just kind of bring some definition from a lexicons, Tehom refers to, often translated as the deep, the depths, the primeval ocean, sometimes also referred to as the flood.
Interesting. Okay.
So that should already be interesting. Yeah, it should be interesting when we
That
think about
is. That's
like,
very interesting.
because if you think about it, here's the thing. When we get there, we'll spend some time with this. Genesis 6, Tehom returns. The word returns in its literary usage, referring to the flood, which is really interesting how the Holy Spirit is guiding the authors to describe the world around them. But so it's translated as deep depths, primeval ocean, flood, deluge, Deep
Deluge.
deluge, yes.
That's an interesting word.
Yeah, a word I don't usually ever hear ever.
It's a very rare word, but I like it.
I do too. And then also deep springs and underground waters,
Okay.
which makes sense.
Yeah.
We're gonna another one we're gonna get to eventually is Jonah. It appears with
Ooh.
Jonah, and where does Jonah go when the Tehom appears? Well, when in the belly of the giant fish.
Yes.
What's funny is that the Hebrew for that is dog. Um,
Oh.
so when he's in the dog,
So is
they're
it a dogfish then?
uh, sure it's an easy way to remember it. But they're in the Tehom, which we've talked about in a Q and R that we didn't record, but
Yeah.
plays into the question of did Jonah actually die? I mean, he at least believed he did,
Yes.
but did he actually? And but the way he describes the world that he's going through once he's in that dog
Mm.
is interesting. So when we translate it as deep, it kind of gets a picture of the waters. Scholars I found have found a more interesting way of characterizing it as chaos waters, of which like, what the heck does that even mean? We think of like chaotic waters, like
Yeah.
in the oceans when the winds blow by, but chaos waters. The idea, as you said, with chaos and unstructured, unfulfilled state of disorder, lacking of order, is the present state. That there is darkness, perpetual darkness, and water.
Hmm.
And we're not going to do a Genesis 1 study. We're just kind of looking at this, but we will get to, I
I think
think,
you did a little bit of a Genesis 1 study.
what's that?
You did like the different days of creation.
Well, I mean, right now, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And even then, that those videos were very short, and I've come to find some more stuff that I wish I recorded.
yeah.
But I'll get to share that in the Chaos Monster class. But what we get here is we're going to get to days 2 and 3 a little bit. Sorry, day 1 and 2 a little bit. And then when we do the class, we'll hit on day 4 and 5 a little bit because it'll be interesting. Be all very fun stuff. But I think, in my experience, many people talk about these opening verses as if it is the ex nihilo passage, referring to
Hmm.
this is the creation from nothing. But the earth is under the waters right now, as we see in day 3. So while the Bible affirms ex nihilo, this is taking a framework of order being brought.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really interesting, and also we'll get more into it, but the Greek is very reflective of that.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Like there's some things where I was like, interesting choices, and then I looked into more of the Greek words, like, ooh, I see why you did that. That's a cool move that you made there in that translation choice.
Hmm.
Because the Septuagint is a translation of it. So
Yes.
you had a Bible nerd who back in the day translated this thing. So
What a way to phrase it.
I know I can't take credit for that one, but I like that one. I wish I could be called a Bible nerd. I'm not
You are
quite.
a Bible nerd,
I
James.
don't know if I'm there yet. So let's understand the scene a little bit more. So for the first day, we have this outline state of the Eretz, or the earth, and
Hmm.
it is tovu vavohu, which tells us that there is darkness that is over the deep waters,
Yeah.
and this present picture is that there is darkness and water, which is going to be very interesting when we look at day 1 and 2 because there are two things created. But I'm going to hold on to that before I get ahead of myself. What we get here is then when we look at verse 2, we have Tahom and we have Hoshek for darkness.
Hmm.
And when we go to even just like day 1, which we'll spend a little bit of time here, we have that we have it where it says this, and God said there be light, and there was light, and God saw the light that it was good, and God caused there to be a separation between the light between the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there was evening, there was morning the first day, and God's that's day 2, but day 1 we get is that he brings this light, which can be talked about a whole nother day because that's a whole nother rabbit trail, but this light comes into its place and he separates light and darkness. So the thing that's first in the issue of the beginning state is that there's darkness and then there's the waters. And he deals with the light first, but he calls the light good. He says nothing about the darkness.
Yeah.
Um, so implicitly, the light is good and the darkness is Ra. So Tov and Ra. But it doesn't mean it's evil. It just means that it is
Mm-hmm.
not ordered. It is not the desired state of a perpetual darkness. Perpetual darkness is not the desired state for creation to flourish in its purpose to glorify the Lord and to have in this intimate relationship between creation and Him. That even if you think about it today, like plants need light to, grow. We need light for some of our vitamins to just kind of like live. And so God structures our life in needing light, but then allowing darkness to have its time.
Right.
But again, it's not Him creating evil; it's Him bringing an order of time, which I think is really interesting that
Mm-hmm.
that's structured there. Day one, I think we focus so much on what the heck is this light source,
Yeah.
but the light is given a new name. So because it's not the light is called day, so he's establishing time. He's establishing the way that our world functions in time. So he's provided us with days, which will then turn to years and months and all those things. But he calls. I want to focus on because the darkness is not called Tov, but the light is. But then we go to Genesis. We go to day two with Genesis, and it says, "And God said, let there be a vaulted dome in the midst of the waters, and let it cause a separation between the waters." So God made the vaulted dome, and He caused a separation between the waters which were under the vaulted dome and between the waters which were over the vaulted dome, and it was so. And God called the vaulted dome heaven, and there was evening and morning a second day. What's missing in that day? There's nothing called Tov at all.
I didn't know if that was a rhetorical question or not. I'm going to be honest with you.
All right, that's fair. But there's nothing there called Tov.
Right.
The entire day
Right.
is done, but it's not called Tov,
Yeah.
which is, I think, is
Fascinating.
strikingly interesting.
Fascinating.
Very much so. But then you go to day three, the first half, and then it talks about how God says, all right, let the waters be gathered, the waters below be gathered, so the land may appear. So the land's currently covered, and when the land appears, and he distinguishes Yam and Eretz, so Yam being the
Mm-hmm.
word for sea, which is funny enough also the name of a Canaanite god. So it's almost like a shot at that god.
Yeah.
Then you have Eretz. That's when he calls it good. So it's like 2.5 days to deal with the darkness in the waters, and then he calls it good when there's light and there's land, which means implicitly that Tehom is not the desired state of creation.
Right.
It is not the desired state of order. It is currently disorder. And the ancients had this fear of the water, which, think about it, the ocean is beautiful,
I am
deadly.
terrified of the ocean.
It's
No, you
deadly.
don't have to convince me of that.
No, it's like there's so many monsters down there, so many creatures. It's just dark down there, and you put your house too close to it, it could absolutely wipe you
It
out.
will eat your house,
It will eat
literally.
your house. But yeah. So I don't know. I've been talking a lot. Do you have any thoughts on the thing, anything I said, or reflections, or
Well, yeah, I mean, as you kind of mentioned briefly, the Greek really does kind of back up a lot of what you're saying.
yeah?
Um, I do find it interesting, though, in terms of the word for Greek in Greek
Mm,
for the deep,
yeah,
right? Abusu. In
yeah,
this passage, it's abusu, and the nominative singular would be abusos.
yeah.
Um, it is derived from the root word buthos,
Okay.
which means deep or the sea.
Mm-hmm.
But to add the alpha onto it, make it abus,
Yeah.
abusos. Couldn't Greek for a moment there. To make it abusos, to slap that alpha on the end of it, or the beginning of it rather, actually turns it into a negative.
Mm,
Right? So the idea there is without depth,
mm,
which is not to say that it's shallow, but rather that the depth cannot be measured.
mm.
It is unknowable
Yeah.
without depth.
Yeah.
Right? Because generally we can understand depth as three-dimensional beings.
Sure.
Um, but in this instance, they are very much saying, no, this is unknowable. This is chaos beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
This idea of abyss.
It's just wild stuff.
Yeah.
it's such a very foreign way to view the world than we.
Truly, yeah, it is. Yeah, and kind of what you were talking about with the land, especially. The word there for earth in Greek is gain,
Hmm,
which is not what most people would use for like the planet Earth.
right.
Kind of going back to what we were talking about, how it's not like the actual initial mode of creation.
Yeah.
Gain there is actually usually used as like dirt,
Same thing.
soil,
Same thing with
like
eretz.
earth.
Eretz is very similar. It refers
Yeah.
to either a land or dirt. I mean, you find that when there's many times where, actually, better example, Pharaoh, when there's the famine, and Pharaoh is like with Joseph is collecting all their resources, and it says the whole world came to them. Well, it's more like the whole land, like everyone
Yeah.
in the area came.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the exact Greek in the census of the New Testament. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but they even say the
I
whole
can look
world,
it up real
but
quick.
it's not the whole world. It's just it's part of their land. But even then, you just have like it is the land, and Eretz is used in reference to the land that
Yeah.
the Canaanites or the land of Canaan, where the Jewish people lived, or you
Hmm.
have like the land of Egypt,
Right. It's the actual physical like dirt, soil,
dirt,
earth.
soil, earth,
It's not the planet.
right?
Yeah.
And it because there isn't a concept of a planet in their
Hmm.
minds right now. They're thinking of like, okay, we see all this stuff up there. We have no idea if there's anything more. We just kind of assume that okay, God's up there somewhere, and here we are, and He wants us to not have this separation, but we
Hmm.
do due to our exile from the garden.
Right.
But yeah, so why don't we briefly turn towards the Septuagint?
Okay.
Um, I guess just a very similar read. The first two verses. In the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. I think it's interesting that they used the word "made" there.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that in the Hebrew,
Uranon.
you find
Yes.
that they actually use.
Excuse me. No, not uranon. Epoism.
Hmm, what's interesting is that in the Hebrew, you find that the author uses the Hebrew word for make and for create as synonyms,
Hmm.
and that it is something that only this is only an action that God can do, but it's not talking about this whole like this like the concept we have of this world of the universe today is like whether you accept it or reject it. We our country has the idea of like the Big Bang. We
Right.
talk about like okay, let there be light, and kaboom, there's everything. But it's talking about like he's making things. He's taking things and forming them into the proper structure. He's like saying, all right, waters move here, land move up, and
Yeah.
we have God made the heavens and the earth, but the earth was unseen and unprepared.
Now that's interesting.
I do think that's really interesting.
Well, I say it's interesting because of how the Greek is.
Mm,
It's a different word there.
okay, yeah.
But the earth was unsightly and unfurnished.
Mm.
Interesting that yours says unseen and mine says, or the Septuagint says unsightly.
Well, I think it's.
They're similar, but
I think it works the same way.
I
Because
do
what
think
word?
it works
What's the Greek word that you have? It should be the same Greek word.
for
Unseen.
uh, autotos.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a translation choice for the English that they
Okay,
made. It's
yeah,
the same.
right. But I guess just in terms, I haven't looked obviously at every single use of
Sure.
autotos, but I think it based on how I would understand that, I would think it's a little more like unsightly. Like
Mm.
you don't want to look at it,
Interesting. Yeah.
which kind of makes sense in terms of it being unparalleled chaos and
Yeah.
incomplete and just darkness. You don't want to look at that.
You can't even look at it. There's
Right, you can't.
darkness.
Right. So perhaps it would then be better translated unseen, but
I think that you know. I think both probably. I think it's probably one of those words that has numerous layers
hmm.
that we just don't have a word for it. I think on one hand, if you think about the chaos thing, it makes sense. It's unsightly. Like you don't want to see it because it's so chaotic and it's devoid of life right now. I mean, there's God, but it's devoid of life.
Right.
But it's also unseen because there is perpetual darkness. You can't see it, and so there's nothing to see. But if you could, you don't want to, because it's like
Yeah.
it's just nothingness. You can't comprehend what it is. I mean,
Right.
again, we're thinking of like in today as nothing, as in no thing. which how do you that's still a whole
Yeah.
thing to wrap your head around.
No, I know. That's I get a kick out of. I think it was. I can't recall if it was a comedian or just somebody who told like a funny joke, but they were definitely giving some kind of presentation, and so they were like they were talking about how they were talking to an atheist. It's like what existed before. Actually, it might have been John Lennox.
Maybe.
He's I think, or he may have used it once or twice, but just what was before creation, and it was nothing. Not like the lack of something. Like there is no thing. Right? Lack of implies that there is something to be gained.
Yeah.
There is no thing, nothing. That is a mind-boggling idea. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not empty space. There is no space.
Yeah.
It is nothing.
Right. And then we have this framework, which we're already trying to wrap our head around our own framework. And then their framework is darkness and water.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh yeah, I can picture that. But then you go like, wait,
Right.
what?
Imagine exactly. Imagine you are at the very bottom of the ocean, and you are just looking around with no light. That's the idea there.
Yeah.
But even more so because there's not actually a
Mm.
bottom, right? We're back to without depth.
Yeah.
There's no bottom. It's bottomless. That is a very strange concept
Yeah.
for us,
Yeah.
especially for us. I'm sure it was for them too, to a degree, but
Oh yeah.
much more for us.
But then you add the fact then like yours says unfurnished and over here unprepared.
Right.
I mean that plays into like it's not there's nothing there. It's not like there's nothing established, so it can't be furnished, it can't be prepared because it is
Right.
unsightly and unseen. It
Yeah.
is you can't put things there.
And I love the idea there also of like unprepared, unfurnished. Like
Mm.
it can be completed,
Yes.
but it hasn't been yet.
And what I think is really interesting and beautiful is how at the end of the whole narrative, it doesn't say everything was perfect. So everything was very good. Because the biblical Hebrew and Greek for perfect is to be complete. And so it's like, okay, God's established his order, but he's sharing in the role of work
Yeah.
to complete in whatever way that means
Yeah.
the creative order. And that it is the human project, if you will, is like us working with God as his children, as his images to go forth and to continue to bring order to that
Yeah.
which he says that yeah, you can handle this. You can handle this disorder.
Yeah.
Um, but then okay, and darkness is upon the deep. And I don't know about your translation, but next sentence, and the spirit of God rushed upon the water.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Whereas in the Hebrew, it's the spirit of God hovered
Right.
over the water.
Wait, so then what did you just read?
I read the Lexham's second edition of the Septuagint.
Okay, see, I would not translate that way, right? Kai pneuma theo uh, epiphereto
Mm,
epano tu hudatos. I would not translate that as rushed over. I
yeah.
would, or like rushed. I would translate that as moved,
Yeah, I
which
don't.
is still different than hovered,
Yes.
but it's not quite the idea of
Yeah.
rushed. I don't think
Yeah.
I would agree there.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the decision. I'm not sure if they're. I don't think they're saying to like he was frantic about it, but like he. I think they're playing into the idea that in the Hebrew mind, at least, uh, ruach refers to breath,
Mm-hmm.
wind, and spirit. There's this weird connection, and I'm wondering if the Septuagint translator for this one, to put rushed, is connecting the spirit as a wind blowing over things. Now, whether or not that's the correct way to do it, like you kind of just outlined there, like that might be why they chose
Mm-hmm.
rushed. Like what yours says,
Right, moved.
moved. Okay, yeah.
So there is, I will say, there is obviously this idea of movement. Um,
Either way, he's moving. That's the
yes,
important thing is that he's moving.
right.
He's
He is
there.
moving. He is present, and he is working.
Yeah,
But I guess I would take issue with the use of the word rush.
sure.
I can understand where they're coming from with it, but in modern English, to say that we have a very
Yes.
different picture of what that means.
Yeah. Is probably one of those where it's like, okay, what was the intention of this,
Mm-hmm.
and who's your intended audience?
Right.
If you're curious about that, go find our translation episode. um, but yeah, it's just very interesting how similar and slightly different than the Hebrew, but it
Mm-hmm.
paints some similar pictures. It maybe like kind of even emphasizes some of those pictures.
Yeah.
Now, we I kind of purposely skipped over the second sentence a little bit. Like I read through it, but I've skipped over it purposefully because I think
Okay.
this is a very strong theological statement within the Hebrew and in the Greek. So watch the wordplay here in verse 2. Now the earth was formless and empty. I'm back to Hebrew.
Yep.
Darkness was over the face of the Tehom. The Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the Mayim.
The
They
change in the
changed
word.
words to describe the waters.
Greek does the same.
And so if Tehom is referring to the chaos, the primeval deluge, flood, these waters that are like uncontrollable by man. Like we can't control the ocean. We try to, but like we can't control it. It just destroys the things we have out there, especially when like storms pick up. But then they go from okay, just chaos water to Mayim,
Mm-hmm.
just a regular word for water. But that word changes when
Mm.
when it describes that God is hovering over. So it's like this idea of like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like this interesting picture of like okay when it's in darkness and we're keeping ourselves separate from God, it is chaos. But where there is God, even though He's omnipresent, but where there is God, you could say chaos chills out because it can't
Mm-hmm.
compete with Him,
Right.
and that's why I really love the picture of like chaos is not the opposite of God. God has no opposites,
Correct.
but it's the opposite of life and order,
Right.
which is what we are. We are created in life and order. So it is the opposing force of us, but it's not the opposing force of God.
Right.
God has no opposite. Or another way to think of it is that disorder is lacking of order. It's kind of like evil. Evil is not necessarily this thing, but it's a lacking of a good thing. Lacking of God is disorder. Fullness of God is order.
Right.
And you have okay, there's the perpetual darkness and the chaos waters, but then God's now there. And it's just water.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing to him. It's not. Whereas the other creation myths, like in the Enuma Elish, they have to go to war with the sea dragon and with the forces of chaos. Or in the Egyptian, God is born out of the water
Right.
and then he reproduces. This God is already here. He's not produced from something. He doesn't go to war for
Right.
something. He's just there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first 4 words of I think it's 4 words in the Hebrew Bible. The first 5 of Greek. In the beginning, God.
Mhm.
Right.
Bereshit bara Elohim
Yeah.
is the first 3 words of
In
Hebrew.
arche, epoiesin, hotheos. In the beginning, God.
Yeah.
So actually, you'd have to take epoiesin out because the way Greek grammar structure works, it would be technically in the made the God. If we were to do direct translation to English, but obviously, if you look at the endings and then move things where they should be, it would be in the beginning, God made.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's something about this where I think the unfortunate battle over origins and understanding that in light of Genesis 1
Mm-hmm.
has caused us to miss, as we just saw, the first 2 verses and how deep and rich.
Yeah.
And it's all setting up everything that is going to be used linguistically throughout the rest of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have Tehom reappearing in the Old Testament. And then in apocryphal works in the New Testament, they use, was it abusos?
Yes.
They use those. So when they're switching into their Greek grammar, they use
Luke 8.
that.
Actually, sorry, I think Luke 8 is abuson.
Oh, abuson? Okay. But when you get to the Septuagint, they also go back and translate Tehom to abuson or
Yeah,
abusos.
abuson.
And so this, we wanted to start with this because in my opinion, in order to do a true word study, you have to go back to the original language. But if you want to see how it ties over into the both testaments, you want to see what the Septuagint author use for the Greek
Hmm.
because that's the Bible the New Testament authors are
Right.
more aware of. And you can see them using this language and tying it together, which I think we're going to jump our heads a little bit, but I would love to actually now look
Mhm.
at that Luke passage that you were referencing to,
Sure.
because what's so fascinating is that we have the demoniac and we have the demons, and they have a certain reaction to Jesus when he begins to cast them out.
Hmm.
And I think that is
Well,
quite
so
fascinating.
yeah, before we move on though,
Sure.
the word there, hudados, which is the water.
Yes.
Well, sorry, two hudados would be the
Sure.
water. Um, I find it interesting that the word hudados often is used for like position with water.
Mm.
So it's like from out of water, with the water, on the water. So it's the way it would kind of read would be like God moved over on the water.
Hmm.
So it's interesting that
Yeah.
that specific word choice when it could have been a couple different words,
Sure.
right? If they wanted to keep the idea of the sea, they could have gone with basileia,
Yeah.
right? Which would have just been generic sea. But they chose specifically the authors of the Septuagint chose hudatos, over on the water, or over with the water, or over from the water.
Hmm.
I just find that interesting.
I think it's really interesting how the authors, obviously guided by the Holy Spirit, describe like this chaos and they diminish it. It's not something that's equal to God. It's not something that has to go to war with God. It's not something that has to
Mm-hmm.
create God. It is lesser than. And similar in Hebrew, they could have used the word sea, but they saved the word sea until day two,
Right.
which is yam. And then, I mean, we could even like do a whole theme study on waters, which would take forever. But
True.
but when you
Yeah.
take yam and sea, well, we jump ahead of ourselves a lot a bit. What is the thing that it says that Jesus is walking on? The sea.
I see. Yeah.
It's him, and the sea is sometimes used as a synonym for sometimes for Mayim, sometimes for Tahom. But he is walking over it, and it's typically in a storm.
Mm-hmm.
So he is calm and he's moving over the chaos and the storms,
Right.
and he silences it when he's in the boat when he's awoken, which is a huge God move right there, because he is the one who's moving over the sea, like in Genesis 1. He is the one who is speaking to it, and it does as he says, as in day 2 and day 1.
Right.
It's
And
a huge God move right there.
absolutely, and it's funny that you mention him walking on the water
Mm.
as an example because a lot of people don't realize it's a very Christological thing,
Oh, very much.
and I love how Jesus gives the dead giveaway, and then Peter responds accordingly,
Yeah.
which is in Matthew 14:27. Jesus tells the disciples to take courage and to not be afraid because, quote, ego I me.
Mm.
And everybody always translates that it's me or it is I. That's not what he said. He said, don't be afraid, take courage, I am. And Peter says, Lord, if it is you, recognize it. Peter fully recognized what he just said. And he says, command. He didn't say ask, didn't say tell, he says, command.
Mm.
He understands that Jesus has just claimed divine authority. And Peter's saying, if that's true, command me to come out onto the water.
Mm.
Have me walk. And he does. And that's why they worship him when he gets into the boat.
Yeah.
Because they fully now understand, oh my goodness, this is God in the flesh in front of us.
Yeah, it's several people have asked me like, why have you done a study on water? So I did a study on Tahoma a while ago, and I went back and started my yam because I wanted to do like specific
Right,
words,
sure.
which is kind of how we're starting, but it might need to go into the
More
various
general,
the
yeah.
more various ways it could be used, because so much it plays into the Christological explanation of who Jesus is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a long study. It's absolutely stunning to
Yeah.
see the usage of water as this picture of a thing that provides hydration and life and has benefits, but also it can just as easily become this force of chaos. Either way, is nothing to God.
Right.
And Jesus is walking over those things. But if we keep this idea of chaos, and the reason I want to make sure we also tie in Abu Son is in the appearances that it has in the New Testament is sometimes translated as pit, as it is the pit
Mm.
that these things come out of or they're afraid to go into, which is really interesting
Yeah.
when you think about, okay, chaos is the opposite of life and order, which is why sometimes they would use Tehom and like the underground water as a scene of as a picture of death, a passageway to the realm of death, which would also be described as like this pit because they didn't know there was an end to the water. They didn't know that there was a surf like the
Right.
bottom layer.
Buso.
Buson, you're just constantly
Without bottom.
sinking.
Yeah, without depth.
You're
Yep.
just sinking forever. And it's the same thing with this pit. You're sinking or you're falling into death. Um, but yeah, let's go. I want to. We're gonna save some of that, but let's look at Luke now, just kind of get some picture of
Yeah.
the back and forth.
Yeah. So I just pulled the passage up, and I mean, there it is. Where are we? Kai parakelon auton ina me. Oh my goodness, I can't. I need to zoom in. My eyes are horrible. Epitaxe atois estein abuson alpethine. That would be, and they were begging him that he would not command them into the abyss to go away.
Mm.
So just like you were talking about, they come out of it, but they are afraid to go to this idea of chaos.
But they're acting as chaos.
They are acting as
but
chaos.
They're afraid of it.
Exactly. And it's the great paradox of sin. Right? This idea that I want to do what I want, but I don't want the consequences of it.
Yeah.
And I want to embrace this life of chaos because sometimes chaos can be a lot of fun, but I don't want to embrace this life of chaos because chaos can be dangerous.
It's like
painful.
They know that if Jesus sends them to the pit, that he's fully sent them to the disorder.
Right.
And death. And they have no reign at all over the world that they are living in right now. These demons.
Yeah.
And they will be, it's like being thrown into further darkness and death, of which they know that death is eventually going to be eviscerated and removed entirely. So they know if they're put there
with them in it,
they know if they're put there, they're done.
Right.
And Jesus is like, sure, go in the pigs, but what they run into the sea.
Exactly.
So there's clearly not is using a different picture here, but it's using the same word. So it's interesting that they run into the waters, but they're afraid of the pit,
right.
which is another weird picture of home, which is the deep, and it's just
which
this
is
weird. It's this weird cosmological. It's almost like this cosmological water.
Right.
They're afraid of this cosmic water that is uncontrollable unto anyone but God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this pit of death and disorder. And they're like, no. No, we're not doing that because they're afraid of that. I mean, they make it very clear that they're afraid. Like, nope, don't send us there. It's just chaos in its fullest form is the complete absence, if you will, of some sort of God. It's the complete lacking of God's goodness and lacking of God's presence. Even though he's omnipresent, he's like all those things, but like they are playing this idea as if while they have passages that definitely affirm that God is omni things, they also play on it as if there's times when he's not there or they feel like he's not there. And to be in disorder is for God to be hands off, stepped away, and just letting things go back into pre-creative state.
Yeah.
Which is the demons wouldn't have any life without a creative state. They had to be made. Right. So it's like being thrown into unmade. It's like completely unmaking them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Chaos Waters.
Yeah, it is something that we could probably go round and round
Well, especially as
about.
we go through each different passages and how
Yeah.
they use this to describe events.
Mhm.
But yes, we could go round and round.
Yeah. But I feel like that's a good starting point.
Yeah, it's a great point. A great way to kind of get us introduced to the idea of chaos waters. And I invite you guys and ourselves to think about not just like, okay, how can it help me better understand the Bible, but how it points to the way that I'm living. Am I living in connection with the Lord in order, or am I giving into the chaos and going into disorder?
Right.
And it's not. It sounds new agey, I think, in some ways. And I think it's because they've appropriated some of this language for themselves, but the language is still there. That there's chaos and there's order,
Definitely. Yeah.
and we're gonna see, um, very interestingly, how they use the chaos to describe some major events and how it leads all the way up to the coming of Christ and then to the final days of Revelation. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, be a wild ride. Sweet.
Yeah. Well, thank you all very much for joining us on this lovely. Well, you'll be hearing this on a Monday. I was about to say this lovely Sunday afternoon.
You
Um,
know, not hearing this right now.
but please be sure to like and subscribe. Give us your thoughts below. Any questions you may have, or if you just want to cause some chaos down in the comments.
Given to home.
Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And Lord willing, we will see you in the next video.
Yeah.